Okay, here we are again. Um, I began the experiment on the 7th of January, um, where each day I would put water, and each night I would put water in each of the sample barriers to create a long-lasting, I guess you would call it, ponding situation where the water is present for 10 days now. Okay, till the 18th. Looks like 10 or 11 days, something like that. Okay. So I am going to give you my observation for 11 days of a ponding situation for each sample. And as you can see, I had made some slits so that we could look underneath each sample to see if any water went through the underlayments. Some of the peel and sticks, or the essays, I did not really cut because it's hard to do and see underneath with all the sticking. So others nailed down. I'll just lift up the underlayment to show you that in every case there is no water seepage beyond the underlayment, very top layer, including the polystick. So I did want to mention also that for when I did apply the water, let's say in the morning after 10 hours of sleeping, some of these would be a little bit dry or very low on water, so it wasn't perfect. But I would just put the new drops inside so that all the water continues as best as possible. So you might say that, you know, for a couple of hours, maybe 1 hour each day, there might be very little water because of evaporation. So I couldn't do it much about that. But I would say for my purposes, it would be a situation where I would say it is definitely a ponding, where the water is always present. So after 11 days, here's the observation. There's no water coming out of the barrier, which doesn't really matter. But what matters to me is if the water goes through the top layer and comes out underneath it, and you can see it has not. For the felt, okay, here's underneath. That's close to the center of the sample, close enough for me to say that no water goes through the felt number 30. The G40 under the first layer, it looks pretty dry. Made these slits immediately before I videotaped. And towards the center, the wood looks pretty dry to me. Okay, and here's the center water there. I put plenty of water this morning. The TU43 right here. Okay, I'm going to lift up a little bit, see if you can see anything. This is water from my screwdriver. I did cut a little bit here so you can see. Okay, right there you can see that there's no water in the area on the wood surface, the deck, you might say. Okay, let's see here. It's kind of a shadow, you can't really tell much, but yeah, you don't see any water on the wood surface underneath the center, basically, or the barrier, basically directly below the barrier. Now the polyglass polystick TU Plus again has water seeping across the barrier and is able to infiltrate the very top, whatever, it's a cloth layer of the TU plus. But as you can see, I don't know if that matters much, if the fact that the water will stay soaking the very, very top surface of an underlayment. I don't know. I imagine it might not be so great. Maybe there's mold that could build up, but I'll leave that up to the roofers to decide. I will show you underneath the top layer, the 2-ply. It looks pretty dry to me. Underneath. Okay. And if I lift this slit up, this slitted section, you'll see that it looks pretty dry underneath the second layer. So the wood substrate, the wood decking would be, I would say, pretty dry, just like the others. Okay, this is just another sample of that. It's the same thing. The MTS Plus polyglass looks the same. There's no seepage of water across the barrier. Well, that doesn't really matter, but the two layers are stuck together, and the bottom layer is stuck to the deck, the wood. So if I lift this up, you can't really see anything. There's no water. You can tell by looking around it. Okay, there's no water coming out of the area. So that looks pretty good. The Polyflex SAP. Okay, the water is in here since the morning and since 11 days ago, basically. This is a self-adhered, so I'm going to try to lift up. There is a sticking component here. So if I lift this up a little, I hope you can see if there's any too much shadowing, but there isn't any water, in my opinion. I'm going to try to get that other light so you can see better underneath. It's possible. Yeah, it looks pretty dry to me. Okay. I could also get a piece of tissue to see for sure. Not that I think there is some water, but it looked a little bit dark, so I'm going to put some tissue paper just to prove that there isn't any water coming in below the Polyflex SAP. You can see the tissue's coming out pretty dry. I did mean to get some tissue paper, some paper too, just in case, but I forgot. So you can see the tissue is very, very dry coming out. So there's no question in my mind. Here's the Polyflex G, which is not a peel and stick. Underneath, you can see. Okay, it's dry. Pretty dry underneath, to me at least. And then we have the Polyglass G from Right Way. And the same situation, it's very dry underneath. This is the same thing as the one before it. It's a nail down, but it's a torch down that is going to be nailed down. So just that there's a very strong light above, so it's a little hard to tell, but hopefully you can see it looks pretty dry. Let me see with the light. Yeah. Okay, there's no water coming through. And the last sample was torched down. I did it with matches, so you could see how it looks. Hopefully I did a good job. And this is the same Polyflex G torched down. No water around it that came out. So all of these seem to be just as good, basically, for the most part, in preventing water seepage through to the wood deck below. The next thing I'm going to do is empty out the water from each sample and tap out the nails a little bit from below. And then I'm going to, for another 1 or 2 or 3 days, I'm going to put more water in and see if the water goes through the holes made by the roofing nails. And I'm going to show you what I bought from, I believe it was Home Depot, the roofing nails. Okay, here's a sample, 1 1/4 inches. I called them underlayment nails, but I guess they're basically the same. Roofing nails is what I have and been using. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to turn it on in a minute just to show you the tapping, one of the nails being tapped, and the release of the water from the puddles.